Hey guys, Chauncey Phillips here with my brand new video talking about what I don't miss about weighing over 450 pounds. Yes, there was a time when I weighed over 456 pounds. If you guys are new to the channel, if you guys look back on old videos starting of June 2014, that was when I was at my absolute heaviest. I had a health scare, ended up getting cellulitis in my leg and going to the hospital, and it totally freaked me out. And after that I was like, I'm going to change everything I'm doing. I changed my diet. I started limiting myself to 1,500 calories a day, and then started going to the gym. And I was going to the gym doing the treadmill. I still go to the gym now 3 times a week, to maintain the weight. Right now my weight is at 190 pounds, and where I am now, I'm very happy. For my size, I'm 6'2", and of course, you have a little bit of extra skin weight and all that kind of stuff as well. So I'm pretty much, where I should be, the ideal weight now, which I never thought there'd be a time in my life where I would actually be at that kind of weight, because I've been, I was heavy my entire life. I was heavy as a kid. There was never a time in my life where I wasn't heavy. And this video is basically me talking about, I wrote down some things that are stuff that I really don't miss in any way, shape, or form about when I used to be that heavy. Kind of all the situations I had, all the kind of problems and all that kind of stuff. And this hopefully, maybe will help some of you guys out there who are interested in losing weight, just kind of me talking about the kind of things that I don't miss, and so, saying how now, these things I don't have to worry about them anymore. And it's kind of, sometimes, you kind of remember, some of the ways that you used to be, and you kind of forget that you're not that way anymore. So every so often that kind of happens a little bit. That's kind of one of those things you kind of have to work your way through, is getting past some of these things. And that's one of the things a lot of people talk about too when they lose weight. They have kind of body image stuff and body dysmorphic disorder and all that kind of stuff, and they kind of see themselves that way. And every so often, I kind of forget that I'm not that size anymore. But basically though, I wrote down all the different things. The first thing I wrote down, this was something that was always a huge nightmare before me, which was flying, was going on airplanes. Going on airplanes was usually one of the biggest nightmares of my life, because, the heavier I was getting, one of the big things with airplanes is, you have to sit in these seats, and these seats are very, very small, and they're very, very small when you're in, very heavy. It's even worse. And I remember going on Southwest. Southwest Airlines was the absolute worst, because they were all about, buying 2 seats, and I remember I was waiting in line one time there, probably 2007, 2008, and they said, "Oh, sir, you may be more comfortable if you purchase 2 seats." It was always a nightmare with the seats. A lot of times, I was thinking if I'm gonna have to get this other seat, and the other thing was the seatbelt never closed, so I used to always have to get a seatbelt extender. So I was always so afraid of having to ask for that. I hated that. That was one of my least favorite things of all time, was asking the stewardess for a seatbelt extender, because it was really embarrassing. I used to carry that thing, and basically what a seatbelt extender was the thing that you would put in the seatbelt to make it longer when you're really heavy, and I used to always have to get that. And then I got to the point where too, down the line, when I got really heavy, probably 2011, 2012, when I was going, doing some film shoots and stuff like that in other states, I used to actually have to get the first class tickets, because and sit in the first class seats because they were bigger, or pay for 2 seats. That was a nightmare, because it added so much more money, and it ended up being less money to get the first class tickets than actually having to get the 2 seats. It was a huge to-do, and the one time I didn't get the 2 seats, I remember I sat next to this one woman, and she said to the stewardess, "I can't sit next to this man. I can't sit next to him. You're going to have to move me." And I was real afraid I was going to get put off the plane, and then I was going to miss the thing. And that was one of the worst things for me, was the 2 seats. And the seat issues with the seatbelt extenders, that's one thing I don't miss in any shape or form. I love now, if I do go on an airplane, it's simple. I can just sit in there. It's no big deal. I don't have to deal with any of that. One of the other things that I still, remember, every time I drive by this place, I'm like, oh, so glad I don't have to go in there anymore. And that is having to go to the big and tall store to get clothes. That was I dreaded that more than you guys can imagine. Something about going in there, since it was a store for all people who were really overweight, and, when you couldn't get clothes, if you, I think it was usually if you were past a 2X, you had to go there, because my clothes at the end got to a 6X, which is hard to believe. And I remember though, me and Brendan Wetmore used to always say, Wetmore 1 used to always say, well, the clothes in there go up to an 8X, so we'll be alright for a while. I remember the stuff we used to say, talking about the weight, and it was really, really bad the way we used to talk about it, because we're like, oh yeah, even if we get any bigger, we'll be alright. We used to say stuff on the phone too, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow if I wake up and stuff. We had some really negative conversations when we were at our heaviest about the things. But going in there and having to talk to the people in there and having to buy the clothes in the big and tall store. I used to also had to get them off of this catalog called King Size, which they still send the catalogs to today. They're probably thinking, since I haven't ordered anything in there forever, they're probably thinking that I, passed on. Because I mean, I used to order stuff all the time, the big shirts and the big pants and all that kind of stuff. Like the 64 or 68 waist, huge waist. Oh, it was bad, and I have some videos in the past too showing me showing the old pants and stuff like that, so you can see what they look like. But that is like something I totally do not miss at all. That was such a nightmare for me, having to deal with going in there. One of the other things too was the idea of going to theme parks. Like, theme parks were always I always have loved going to Disney and Universal and all the types of theme parks. I always have liked it. But when I used to go, I used to traipse and waddle around and really do nothing. There was very few things I could do. There was a couple rides that I know I could go on, but then when it came to like things like Splash Mountain and all the water rides and like the Popeye and all those kind of things that I always kind of wanted to do, I used to always know that I was too big to do it. And it was always a huge to-do. So I didn't bother with it, and I knew I couldn't get in them, or I couldn't close the thing, or I needed to get the seatbelt extender for some of those rides if they had them. So there was very few rides that was actually going on up until 2014 when I started losing the weight, that I could finally go on things again. But that was always a nightmare, was going to these theme parks and having all kinds of problems with the rides and not being able to go on them. And so I used to just basically walk around a lot. And I used to always, too, get real hot there, and I would get like these leg rashes and stuff like that on the bottom of my legs from the heat, and all kinds of problems with going to the theme parks. One of the other ones was really bad too, was not being able to sit in booths at restaurants. Not being able to sit in booths at restaurants was really bad. Like, it got near the end, I was basically not able to get in them at all. Like, my stomach would be pushing against them, and it'd be like shoving against it, like where I couldn't even breathe. So I'm like, I can't do this. And I used to have to go to like a place like Outback. They used to have a couple tables. Like, all restaurants have a few tables, but usually there's not many of them, and most of them are all booths. And certain places were all booths. So if you wanted to go to certain places like Denny's, or some of the ones, the kind of places like that where they were all booths, I couldn't even do it. There was no way I could sit in them. But Outback, I used to always have to wait extra time for a table. I remember you could go in there, sit down right away at a booth, but if you wanted a table, because there was only 3 or 4 tables, I used to have to go in there and wait 45 minutes until people would get up. It was a nightmare. I used to hate going to those places because it was always a big to-do with the booths and all that kind of situations of not having to be able to sit down and having to wait all this extra time and the embarrassment of the whole thing. That was, like I said, I do not miss that at all. One of the other things too was having to, in the car, I had to back the seat up as far as I could in the car, and then I had to put it, pivot it back, so I was kind of sitting back like this when I was driving, because I continuously watched the steering wheel get closer and closer to my stomach. And I used to do stuff too like this, where I would put my hand next to the steering wheel and see how much space is in between them. I remember when I was driving cross country, I was doing that, and it was like this little bit, and by the end my stomach was basically touching the steering wheel. I do not miss that at all. Now I'm in there, it's this huge space between it. I never would have thought that would happen. I do not miss having to sit that seat back as far as I did. And also, it was always a big to-do, too, with cars when it came to, driver's ed and all that kind of stuff. I used to have to use a bigger car because I couldn't use the small cars that they did because I couldn't fit in them. Because, like I said, I was very heavy. Like I said, for me, it was very big. One of the other things that was really bad for me was sleeping issues. I used to have terrible sleep apnea. So I would, and if I would go certain places where I had to lay dead flat, I would basically panic and would not be able to sleep. I remember sometimes when I would be places where I would be in a hotel room, I would be laying back flat, and I was basically thinking, I'm not going to wake up. I was basically panicking in the bed going, I don't know if I'm going to wake up. I think I'm probably going to die in here tonight, because I couldn't breathe when I laid back. And I remember too, even in this house, when I was laying flat basically what I did though was, at first I had to keep laying flat, and I would wake up and I'd be like, gasping for air, and that was happening all the time, and I was getting so paranoid about that. Eventually I was like, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore. I started sleeping in this room in the couch, and I would basically sit in a chair and, you know, put the couch back because it was like a reclining chair, and I would sleep on the couch. Of course, though, I broke the couch over time doing that because it was too heavy sleeping in it. So for a good year, this is stuff I never really talked about, for a good year or so I was sleeping on the couch out here because I was panicking so much about, you know, not waking up and all that kind of stuff. So then eventually I ended up getting one of those beds that kind of pivots up, where almost like a hospital bed, when, you know, you could rise it up like that and rise the feet up, and sleep like that. And that's what I was doing, but still, ever so often too, I would be in there panicking, have to sleep out here again. That was happening really bad, I think, in probably about 2013. And then right after that, like, I think that winter or so, I got the different type of bed that went up, and that kind of helped that. Now I sort of still have that bed, which I don't even need it at all anymore, but it's kind of like weird. I still sleep with it kind of up a little bit. That's one of those weird things I have to kind of get over, even though I have no problem with that waking up and all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm saying, though, is like I'm sure a lot of people who are heavy have that kind of thing. And like I said, if you lose the weight and you work at it, that can go away, and all these things go away. All these terrible problems go away. At least for me, they did. Like I said, with sleep apnea, the bed thing, and then having to sleep on the couch. The other thing was always bad. The thing too, like the dread of being in public, when people would always be staring at me, and then like continuously, I would always see people kind of looking at you like, you know what I mean, like for being so big. And the worst was kids. Kids would always. I remember a number of times when I was walking around, and then like the kids were like, "Mommy, look." Big guy, and all that kind of stuff. And also, the thing about that too is, I kind of hated when people always were saying Big Sean and Big this and Big that, and I don't know, like something about that really was always bugging me. You know what I mean? Like I know I was, but like I don't know, I just didn't really want to be called it. You know what I mean? And I didn't like attention being drawn to it, even though I was drawing so much attention to myself. But that always used to drive me so crazy. One of the other things was issues going, like things with going up steps and like getting winded and all that kind of stuff. Like always if I would go up steps, I remember one time there was like by one of these like sound stages in LA. I remember there was one of these like 3 or 4 flights of steps, and I remember I had to drag a suitcase up there, and this is probably 2011. I remember going up there, and when I got to the top of the steps, I was literally couldn't get my breath for probably 15 minutes. And that's something I do not miss at all. Was if I went up too many steps and had too much of a hike to something, usually stairs, I would be at the top of the stairs and I'd be like, and things would be dizzy. Things would be spinning. I couldn't get my breath and breathe and like actually take a breath. And it would go on near the end. And this was 2011. This wasn't even my worst. My worst was 2014. I was having this no ability to get my breath. Now I can go up steps and run up the steps. I have no problem with that. But the amount of problems that I had with the steps and that breathing and thinking I was going to have a stroke or a heart attack, which I think if I would have kept it up, it was going to happen, because it was just going up the steps in this house. I had the same kind of problem with, if I went up too quick or I had to go up too many times. I used to always have to send my brother up to get things. I was like, "Can you go up there and get this? Can you go up there and get that?" It even got so bad too with some of that kind of stuff, with like putting on shoes and all this kind of stuff. It was just like, oh, they all kind of blend together with that. One of the other things too, it was a weird thing that I used to do, and I know a lot of people too, I've noticed, that are overweight and stuff do this as well. It's kind of like, it's like a coping mechanism for being big, which is acting very big in public and acting very over the top and being very loud. I remember like I used to always be very loud and like talked really loud and tried to kind of bring attention to myself and say dumb things. And like even the way I used to act in some of the videos, it was kind of dumb, and like I look back on them and kind of cringe at myself. And it's like something, I don't know what it is. And I notice, even if I see a lot of other bigger people and stuff, like they do the same thing that's just like I was doing, which is like this like over the top, being really big, being really over the top with your actions and the way you are, and like screaming and saying dumb things. And yeah, I don't know, it's just like something I don't miss doing that. I don't miss acting that way at all. And I don't know why I did that, but I was always doing that. One of the other things too was really bad leg swelling. I had such bad leg swelling. Like if I was on my feet too long, or I went to the theme parks and stuff like that, my legs would swell up. I don't have any pictures of it. I wish I did. but they would get so swollen, and I'd be able to basically push into like the leg, and it would be like make an indentation. It got really bad for me, that leg swelling. Like now it's just totally normal. I don't have any of that kind of problems, but from being so heavy, I had like really bad water retention. If you look at some of the videos too, in like you know, May and early June, my face was so swollen up. That's like, it's like really bad with like retaining water and all this kind of stuff. I was a big mess with all that stuff, and I had the bad high blood pressure and all that kind of stuff going on, and I had to take the pills when I first got on, started losing the weight. Lucky enough now I don't have to take any of that kind of stuff at all anymore. And one of the last things too was, and it kind of relates to one of the ones I said a second ago, is being known as the big guy. Like being known as the big guy really, and I know I was, but it really embarrassed me for some reason, and I had a real problem with that. I had a real problem with everyone always calling me Big Sean and always sort of seeing me as the big guy. I remember even in school people were like, you should be playing football, because like they didn't know what to say to me because I was always so big. Like even in high school, I think it was at least 300 pounds at least. So I was always extremely overweight and always the big guy. Even in like a lot of the movies that I did, you know, when I was heavy, I was always like the big guy, or kind of like the jokey kind of thing, sight gag kind of thing. And I don't miss that. I mean, yeah, I did some cool things when I was really heavy, but you know, but I don't miss that anymore now. One thing too with weight loss and stuff is like keeping the weight off, and I've been really lucky to have been able to stick with it, because I know a lot of people go back to their old ways, but me, I'm so obsessive with this, and like doing these kind of videos help me too. I still to this day, and watching the calories, I'm not eating 1,500, I mean like 2,500 now, and like a little bit more if I go to the gym. And I basically have figured out exactly how much I can eat to stay exactly where I am, and I've been real careful and kind of figuring out exactly, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, so I'm real careful with all that kind of thing and sticking with it. But, you know, this is just my video, though, talking about the things that I, you know, do not miss at all about, you know, being over 450 pounds. And, you know, like I said, guys, when I did this all without any type of surgery. A lot of people have always, you know, some people say, oh, yeah, you did the surgery and all that. I mean, to be honest with you, if I did the surgery, I would mention that, because I feel like it needs to be explained how I did it. Really, like I said, it was all just the calories. Wasn't eating any special foods or anything like that. It was just basically, you know, going places where, you know, I knew what the calories were, looking them up, or, you know, getting like TV dinners, whatever it was, where I could see exactly what the calories were, and then I would add them up on a piece of paper. And that was it. But like I said, I have a lot of other videos. I'll put a link to the playlist below of my whole weight loss, so you guys can check that out if you guys haven't seen this. But if you guys enjoyed this video, definitely, guys, you know, share this video around on any type of like weight loss message boards, or any places you know where people might enjoy this video and have, you know, take something out of this. But anyway, though, guys, thanks again for all your support with this, and, you know, support my videos and subscribing, and I'll see you guys later.